My first clue that the world was about to crack open was the way the morning air tasted. It wasn't rotten or sharp, not yet, just stale. You know that dry, recycled AC air that sticks to your teeth? That's what it was like walking out of my apartment complex in Akron, Ohio, carrying a half-spilled mug of coffee, keys in my mouth, backpack already digging into my shoulder. I work nights, so my days start when everyone else is getting lunch. That Friday was supposed to be the same. Grind through a shift at the grocery store, hit the gym with my best friend Darren, then Netflix and pass out before sunrise. Except the world had different plans, and nobody bothered to tell me. Everything looked normal, but nothing felt normal. I passed a woman I see every morning walking her corgi. Today, she was dragging him like he weighed 100 pounds, her face red and sweaty even though it was barely 70 out. She coughed, not a delicate, polite cough, but a deep, chesty one that made her stop, hands on knees. I pretended not to notice, like we all do when people look sick. But then the next block, a mailman was slumped against his truck, elbows on the wheel, staring at nothing. Behind him, a dark red streak trailed from the curb to under his back tire. No one else even looked at it. I hesitated, then kept walking. If you're from here, you know you don't get involved unless someone's screaming for help. And nobody was. That's the Midwest for you. We mind our business even when the world is on fire. At work, the fluorescent lights hummed so loud it felt like a headache starting. The PA system kept cutting in and out, spitting static every few minutes. People looked tired, all of them. A customer left a bag of groceries at the register and just walked out. My manager, Miss Elaine, was pale as paper, her hands shaking when she tried to open the safe. She dropped a 50 and it just sat there until I picked it up. That's when I noticed a military van parked crooked outside the laundromat next door. Army green, no markings, just 2 soldiers inside. One scrawling his phone, the other staring straight ahead. They didn't move for hours, not even for coffee. There's an Army reserve base a few towns over, but you don't see them around here unless there's a parade or a flood. By 2, my phone started glitching. Calls wouldn't go through. Texts lagged or came in scrambled, full of typos that weren't mine. I tried to check the news, but the local station's live feed kept freezing, switching between a regular weather girl and a breaking news banner that never loaded. At one point, the radio at the front of the store barked out a voice, tinny and frantic, then cut to silence. Miss Elaine tried to call her son, but just got a busy signal. Nobody seemed to know what was going on, and the more you asked, the less anyone wanted to answer. By 3, the grocery aisles were empty except for 2 old men arguing about the Yankees. Darren was supposed to meet me for lunch, but he ghosted my texts. That never happens. He's the kind of guy who'll FaceTime you from the drive-thru if you don't answer a meme fast enough. When my shift ended, I walked home, feeling that weird tension you get before a thunderstorm. I saw the same military van, now with both soldiers slumped low in their seats, windows fogged. The mailman was gone, but the blood was still there, now dried to a sticky black. The corgi lady was nowhere to be seen, just her leash looped around a fire hydrant. I called Darren again. Nothing. I tried my mom, who lives on the other side of town. No ring, straight to voicemail. Even my group chats had gone quiet except for those weird texts, full of random numbers and half sentences. One from Darren just said, "Are you home? Don't open," and then cut off. When I got back inside, I deadbolted the door, which I never do. I filled the bathtub and every water bottle I owned, just because. My stomach felt twisted and my hands wouldn't stop shaking. I watched the news for any sign of what was happening, but the anchors looked like they'd been awake for days, reading the same lines over and over. Authorities advise residents to remain calm. Isolated incidents of illness. No cause for alarm at this time, but the footage behind them was all wrong. Ambulances lining up outside a school, military trucks blocking a freeway, police in hazmat suits. No lockdown order, just suggestions. That's what started to bother me the most. If things were this bad, why wasn't anyone saying it? Night fell, and I sat in the kitchen with the lights off, just my phone for company, doom scrolling for updates. Every few minutes, a siren would echo through the neighborhood, then stop. I thought about calling my dad, but I hadn't heard from him in years. I texted Darren again, "You alive?" and stared at the 3 little dots. They never blinked on. I got up and checked the windows, pulled the curtains, made sure the back door was locked. It wasn't enough. At 2 a.m., the TV glitched again. The screen went black, then flickered to a shot of the city skyline, empty and silent. A mechanical voice, not a real person, said, "Remain indoors, secure all entry points, do not attempt to leave, repeat," and then nothing but static. My hands were sweating so bad I dropped the remote. I stood up, heart in my throat, and realized for the first time how quiet everything had become outside. No cars, no crickets, just silence. I'm not the type who panics, but that night I started prepping. I pushed the couch against the door. I taped up the windows with cardboard and duct tape. I texted every friend I could think of, but all I got back were random letters, numbers, or nothing at all. I kept thinking about Darren, about the blood by the curb, about the van with the 2 soldiers never moving. I found my old baseball bat and set it by the bed, just in case. The news kept repeating the same line. Authorities advise residents to remain calm, over and over, like a prayer for the already dead. There was never any official lockdown. Nobody came to save us. Nobody even said the word. The world just slid sideways, quietly, like a house settling on its foundation. I lay awake all night, listening for footsteps outside, wondering if I'd wake up to find the world I knew replaced by something I couldn't understand, wondering if I'd already missed my chance to run, wondering what I'd do if Darren showed up at my door, and he wasn't himself anymore. And barely slept. It's weird how your body knows something is wrong before your mind does. When the sun finally dragged itself up, I was still fully dressed, the bat across my chest like a security blanket. The city outside was dead quiet. No dogs barking, no trash trucks rumbling down the street, no high schoolers blasting music on their way to first period. I pressed my forehead to the window, expecting to see it. I don't know. Military marching by? News vans? Instead, I saw Mrs. Kettler from 2 doors down, wandering in her robe with a limp, dragging a suitcase behind her. I almost waved, but she stopped under a street lamp and started banging her head against the pole over and over until blood smeared down her white hair. I ducked back like I'd been shot at. That was my first confirmation, but I tried to deny it, like any normal person. Maybe she was sick. Maybe she had dementia. I watched her until she fell over and lay twitching in the gutter, and then I pulled the blinds tight and told myself it was a nightmare. I wanted to call someone, scream for help, but my phone was dead, even though it was plugged in all night, landline too. The only thing still working was the emergency alert on the TV, frozen on a block of red text that kept glitching. "Do not leave your..." Then nothing but static, a loop of half a warning, over and over. I tried to eat cereal. I couldn't swallow. I kept thinking about the soldiers in the van, and how nobody ever left the van, and how now I couldn't even see the van. I checked the parking lot. It was gone. Just a long, ugly stain on the asphalt where something must have leaked or bled out. The first infected person I saw up close wasn't a stranger. It was Michael, the guy from 1B who always played his music too loud and bummed smokes off the mailman. He pounded on my door like a cop, calling my name. "Eli, open up! I know you're in there!" He sounded normal, desperate, but something in my gut told me not to answer. I watched through the peephole. His eyes looked wrong. Too wide. His face was streaked with blood, his jaw moving like he was grinding his teeth to dust. He kept begging, then screaming, "Help me! They're everywhere! Please, man, please!" I almost opened the door. Almost. Then he started clawing at the wood, tearing at it with his bare hands until his fingernails snapped and bled. I backed away. I just stood there, feeling useless and ashamed, heart pounding so hard I thought I'd black out. He pounded until his voice cracked, and then fell silent. A while later, I heard the scraping again. I checked the peephole and saw him, just standing there, staring at my door. Silent now, just drooling, head cocked at a weird angle. His skin looked gray, like he'd been dipped in ash. He banged his head once, twice, then wandered off down the hall, hands dragging against the walls, leaving smears. I felt sick. My hands shook so bad I dropped my phone, which didn't even light up anymore. That was when it finally sank in. The infected weren't strangers on TV or in some faraway city. They were here, my building, my floor, my people. The next hour blurred into a mess of noise. I heard screams downstairs, something heavy smashing against metal. The building's fire alarm went off, blaring and then dying just as quick. I could smell smoke, but not see where it came from. I kept thinking about Darren. I kept thinking about my mom. I kept thinking I should do something. Go help, go fight, go look for survivors. But I didn't. I just sat on the floor, baseball bat in my lap, sweating through my clothes. When the banging on my door started again, it wasn't Michael this time. It was a little girl, Kayla from 3C. Her voice was soft but clear. "Mr. Eli, let me in. I'm scared." My heart nearly exploded. I rushed to the door, but before I unlocked it, I looked through the peephole. Kayla's hair was soaked with sweat and blood, her eyes wide and glassy. She started scratching at the wood, exactly the same way Michael had. I staggered back, almost puked. It wasn't her anymore. I closed every curtain and sat in the dark, waiting for something. Rescue, the military, an official lockdown, a miracle. But nothing happened except more screams, more silence, more static warnings on the TV. It hit me right then, in my kitchen with the water running and the fridge humming like it didn't care about anything happening outside. We weren't getting saved. There was no plan. There was no lockdown. There was just us, the ones left behind, making it up as we went. By afternoon, the infected were in the building. I heard them in the halls, moving slow, bumping into things, never talking, never shouting, just moaning, dragging, scratching. One smashed the glass in the fire escape, and the whole floor filled with that sound of bare feet slapping linoleum. I could hear my neighbors, the Andersons, the ones with the 3 kids and the loud TV, screaming, doors slamming. Then silence. I turned up the volume on the emergency alert just to drown it out. I knew I couldn't stay, not forever. I shoved food into a backpack, crackers, peanut butter, beef jerky, water bottles, and wedged a kitchen knife into my belt. I put on my heaviest boots. I almost wrote a note, just in case, but what was I supposed to say? If you find this, sorry? If you find this, I tried. I waited until the noise in the hall faded, then I cracked the door open, just enough to see. The lights flickered. Michael was gone, so was Kayla. The hallway was a mess, broken glass, streaks of blood, groceries scattered everywhere. I didn't see anyone, so I slipped out, bat raised. Every sound was too loud, my breathing, my footsteps, the blood thumping in my ears. On the stairs, I almost tripped over a body. It was Miss Elaine, my manager, face down, her apron still tied around her waist, her leg bent the wrong way. I pressed my fist to my mouth so I wouldn't scream. I made it down to the first floor, listening for movement, for breathing, for anything. I could hear voices outside, not words, just a chorus of moans. It was like the whole city was waking up wrong, every person shifting into something hungry and dead. When I reached the lobby, the glass doors were shattered, blood everywhere. I ran, boots slipping on the wet floor, out into the morning that was way too bright, way too quiet. The street was unrecognizable. Cars smashed, mailboxes ripped open, a bike lying in the middle of the road with its front tire still spinning. I didn't know where to go. There was no plan, no safe place. The only thing I knew was I had to keep moving. I looked back once and saw Michael standing in the doorway of the building, sunlight washing over his face, mouth open in a silent scream. He didn't follow. He just watched me go, and then he started to walk into the street, blending in with all the others, dragging himself toward whatever came next. That's when it finally hit me. The infection wasn't just about a sickness. It was about a change. The way they moved, the way they stared, the way the world kept going like nothing had happened. It all felt wrong, like the rules weren't the same anymore, like nobody was who they used to be, including me, because I kept walking, never looking back, leaving my old life, my friends, my neighbors, my sense of safety behind in the wreckage, with nothing but a bat and a pack full of junk food to my name. I wasn't ready. Nobody was. But it didn't matter. The world had already decided for us. You never really know what you're capable of until you have no choice. That thought stuck with me as I picked my way down the street, one hand clenched tight on my bat, the other white-knuckling my backpack strap. My legs wanted to run, but I forced myself to walk, to look as normal as possible. There were others out. Not many, just enough to make me doubt my own eyes. Some shambled, dragging one foot behind them, blood crusted on their shirts or faces. Others walked too straight, glancing around in that lost way you see after a car crash. I kept moving, head down, praying none of them would look my way. I ducked behind a burned-out minivan as a woman burst from a house across the street, shrieking for someone named Tommy. Her voice sounded torn, like her throat had already given up. She didn't make it halfway to the corner before a man, her neighbor maybe, or maybe not anymore, staggered out and tackled her. I'll never forget the sound, that heavy, wet crunch when her head hit the pavement. I didn't do anything. I didn't yell. I didn't try to help. I watched, frozen, not even breathing, as she kicked and then stopped, her body going still in the middle of the empty road. The man just sat there, rocking back and forth, blood dripping from his mouth. I realized for the first time that staying alive meant keeping my head down and my mouth shut. That was the first thing I lost. I had one destination in mind: Darren's apartment. It was stupid, I know. No power, no plan, nothing but blind hope that he'd be waiting for me, alive and still himself. The world outside was nothing but chaos, sirens blaring in the distance, columns of smoke rising over strip malls, whole blocks gone silent except for the occasional crash or scream. I kept moving. Every block I had to step over bodies, some moving, some not. I didn't look closely. I couldn't. By the time I made it to Darren's building, my nerves were shot. I slipped inside through the busted lobby doors and crept up the stairwell, every shadow a threat. His apartment was on the 3rd floor. The door was locked. I knocked, soft at first, then harder. No answer. I pressed my ear to the door and heard movement, slow and shuffling. My stomach turned to ice. I raised my bat and called out, "Darren!" "It's me." Silence, then a low moan. My heart broke. I wanted to run, but my feet wouldn't move. I waited, barely breathing, until the sound faded. I left him behind right then, and it killed something inside me. The rules had changed, and so had I. I spent that night hiding in a supply closet at the elementary school across the street. It was the only place that felt safe, not because it was strong, but because nobody would think to look there. I barricaded the door with a janitor's cart, curled up on the cold tile, and listened to the city dying outside. Somewhere down the hall, something banged against a locker over and over, a hollow, empty sound that never stopped. I didn't sleep. I just stared at the darkness, replaying the day over and over. The woman in the street, Darren's moan, Michael's bloody hands. Every time I thought about going back, my legs locked up with terror. I lasted 2 days in that closet. The food ran out fast and the water tasted like metal. I kept hearing voices, sometimes crying, sometimes laughing, sometimes just talking about nothing. The worst was when I realized the voices weren't all real. Some of them were in my head, memories breaking loose. On the second night, someone pounded on the door, a man's voice, desperate. "Let me in, please, they're right behind me." I sat there, holding my breath, every muscle screaming to move, but I couldn't. I knew if I opened that door, I might be dead, or worse, I'd have to kill someone who used to be like me. The pounding stopped. I waited an hour before peeking out. The hallway was empty except for a bloody handprint smeared across the wall. I don't know if I did the right thing. I don't think there is a right thing anymore. By the third day, the school wasn't safe. I could hear movement in the halls, feet dragging, doors banging open and closed. I had to move, so I slipped out a side exit, ducked through the playground, and kept moving. That's when I saw the first fire. A whole house burning, the roof caving in, black smoke curling into the blue sky like a bad omen. A woman ran out, her clothes on fire, shrieking. She begged someone, maybe me, maybe God, not to let her die. I couldn't help. I ran. I left her behind, because that's what you have to do now. My chest hurt like I'd swallowed a stone, but I kept going. After that, I stopped looking at faces. I stopped caring about names. I stopped trying to be who I was before. The world burned, and so did the last bits of hope I had for any kind of rescue, any kind of order. I scavenged food from gas stations and houses, never staying long. Every safe place I found turned into a nightmare. Once, I hid in a church basement with 3 other people. An old man, a teenage girl, and a woman who wouldn't talk. We shared what we had, made a barricade, told stories about our old lives. Then, on the 4th night, the girl turned. Nobody saw it coming. She bit the old man. The woman screamed. I grabbed my bat and did what I had to do. I don't remember it, not really. I just remember the sound, that sick, wet crunch, and how afterwards the silence felt heavier than before. After that, I stopped trusting anyone. I kept moving. I left behind places that felt safe, people who begged to be helped. I lied, I stole, I killed. Sometimes I told myself I had no choice, but the truth is, I made those choices. And every time, a little more of who I used to be slipped away, lost in the smoke and blood and the endless noise of the dead city. Now, as I walk down an empty highway littered with broken cars and memories, I know I'm not the same. The world isn't the same. There are no more rules, no more plans, no more lockdowns. Just survival, one step at a time, alone in the silence. I don't know where I'm going. I don't know what's left. I just know I'm still here, still walking, and whatever comes next, I'll face it. Because I have to. Because there's nobody else left to do it.